I am offering you truth. I am Asnefrika, aka Nef. I am the mother of Tehuti Ma'at, which is this revolutionary cooperative. We focus on building cooperative institutions in the areas of healing, art, and education, and they're all centered around the upliftment and the empowerment, the resurrection of people of African ascent worldwide. So, the conversations that we have in this series called Taboos, which stands for taking accountability by owning our shit, are conversations about things that are usually taboo subjects, things that are not considered culturally appropriate, or just things that are suppressed, things that are usually uncomfortable conversations, and things that people don't want to talk about because that waste or shit is exactly what we need to face and allow to surface up from out of the shadows. So I'm just kind of stirring the pot right now with taboos. For those who followed the series last season, we did a number of different topics. If you go to the Tehuti Ma'at World YouTube channel, you can actually watch the previous streams that we've had, and you can just tune in to last season. We had a lot of really great conversations. We had conversations from a range of things, like really deep dives into obviously things like sex, to polygamy and polyamory and, monogamy, and just exploring topics and things that we just need to explore. And I wanted to bring more depth and more cultural and spiritual rooting to some of these conversations for those who are aligned with it. I don't think the depth of the conversations are these conversations are not for everyone. Not everyone is willing to go into these spaces. So if you are here, welcome. If you're here live, welcome. And please feel free to engage in the chat so you can ask your questions. I'm actually going to drop the link to join. So if anyone wants to join in on the conversation, my intention is always to have them as conversations. But unfortunately, because they're taboo topics, sometimes people are not as engaged in wanting to, transparently talk about these things. So today's conversation is about love and lust, right? Spiritually exploring taboos in relationships. I really wanted to center the conversation around the dynamics of kind of some of the things that we consider to be, well, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. So let me be clear about that. But some of the things that sometimes we're not as, sorry, I'm going to just make sure I turn off the notifications, go on, do not disturb. But yeah, some of the things around the way that we relate to each other and our intimate relationships specifically, or what some people call the romantic relationships, I think those are the dynamics that we really need to center, because the way that we relate to each other is very programmed. And I think a lot of it is very unconscious. And even sometimes when we're conscious of it, they can become subconscious, meaning just like kind of beneath the surface, where we may be conscious of a thing or have become aware of it, but not necessarily have the tools or the clarity on how to shift those things. So the intention around our conversation today, I want to start, as I said, if you are here, let me go ahead and first let me put the link. If you want to join our conversation today, I invite you to just join the studio, and I'm just going to put it in the chat. If you are tuning in on YouTube, you're going to have to go on where you can see the live chat. Oh, actually, there we go. I'll put it up there so you can see also. So one of the reasons why I chose the title Love and Lust is because I was thinking about the dynamics and like judgments that exist around lust. And sometimes it's perceived from a very Eurocentric lens, where like lust is seen as like a vice or something that's always a bad thing. And I think that that stifles a lot of relationships because there's a natural aspect of both dark and light that make up our reality. And it's just the reality of we experience positive and negative things, right? Our judgments on those things, whether we think they're good or bad or right or wrong, is a whole nother thing, right? So one of the ancient principles that we always lift, especially considering we are called Tehuti Ma'at, is Ma'at. Ma'at is the principle of wholeness, of truth, of justice. And it's a moral principle, it's a moral code. Ancestrally, we had 42 principles or 42 covenants of Ma'at. And these were like declarations that we said. This is how we maintained a civilized society where we had no need for police because we were policing ourselves with this moral and ethical code. So, for example, in the beginning of the day, we would say, I will not steal, I will not kill, I will not waste water, um, I will not desecrate holy places. And then at the end of the day, we would say, I have not killed, I have not stolen, I have not laid waste on the plowed land, I have not wasted water. But if we got to something where we did, then we would have to account for that for ourselves. It's a moral inventory that we do on ourselves. This is very different from the ways that we've been taught to think about justice and judgment from a Eurocentric lens. And Ma'at is usually shown as the scale. So I will be sharing some images from, for example, the judgment scene, just so we could talk a little bit more about the principle. But in essence, the reason why I'm lifting it this early in the conversation is because it is the grounding principle for how we need to approach any of the taboos. We are in a healing cycle on the planet. And as we can see, there's a lot of debauchery. There's a lot of things that need to be dealt with. When we're talking about relationship taboos, these could be things as simple or like people consider it vanilla, like things that are not, like kind of standard, typical, like cheating to or infidelity, to as extreme as like incestuous relationships, right? Like there are so many different ways that we could go into the different range of taboos, right? But at the end of the day, we have to look at it in terms of Ma'at. And I also want us to orient ourselves to it in the scope of our collective experience on the planet right now. Things have to purge out. So the reason why a series like Taboos is so important is when we face these things, right? When we take accountability by owning our shit, we allow it to be illuminated, lifted, and then we can alchemize. We can shift the energy. It can serve its purpose. We can learn the lessons from those experiences. But if we don't do that, then they stay in the shadows, and in the shadows they have power over us, right? And that's how we get possessed. So one of the other topics that we've talked about in previous taboo episodes has been things like possession, right? Angels and demons, and just like a lot of other things that are kind of like people feel and know and have experiences, but sometimes like it's just kept on a hush hush. So the purpose is for us to have the conversations. So in this degenerate cycle that we're in right now, it's a low point, right? It's just like in nature when we have a winter solstice, right? When we have the longest night and the shortest day. So there's an excess of what we would consider negative or evil forces on the planet. And they're just dense, right? If we don't want to look at them from a word that has heavy baggage or connotation, then we would look at it like density, right? The frequency is lower and it's denser. The expression of the energy is dense. I'm live. So sometimes it's important for us to recognize that these are still all necessary forces, just like the night is a necessary force. The darkness is not necessarily inherently a bad thing. It serves a purpose. It brings balance, right? Chaos, if there is no chaos, there's no need for order. And that's what Ma'at represents, cosmic order. So I think that's first and foremost one of the most fundamental things that we need to acknowledge as we come into the conversations that we're going to have and the topics we're going to open up, to have an open eye. Part of my work as a healer, a multidimensional healing artist, because for me, beyond working with people individually through their process and nurturing them through and coaching them through their own transformation process and facing some of the pain and the things that they're ashamed of, right? A lot of it is the witnessing that is so important. And the reason why most people feel comfortable with that is because they can really genuinely sense and feel the truth of the neutrality, right? And the recognition that I can genuinely reflect on why it's purposeful and why the shame and the guilt and all those emotions and the entities attached to those emotions, right? Those those frequencies, those demons, whatever, however you want to call it, they don't have power when you can face it with truth and with grace. Because again, with Ma'at, you have judgment, but with judgment also comes grace. So there's all these different layers of energy associated with embodying a principle like Ma'at, right? To be the truth, which is really what we're talking about. We're not talking about these as deities or external energies or entities. These are internal indwelling forces, right? The same way you could be possessed by a spirit that will push you into death and destruction, there are spirits of light, of joy, of healing, of purification. That's what these forces are. Ma'at is a force of truth, a force of integrity, and we can embody it, right? And based on our choices, based on our environment, there's so many ways that we can conjure, we can invoke, we can evoke truth, right? With our word, again, because the balance of Ma'at is Tehuti, her counterpart, right? So in ancient African Kemetic science, you always have the partner of the energy. They're always in couples. You have the masculine and you have the feminine energy. So Ma'at is the wife of Tehuti. And these are symbolic of active, which is masculine, right? It pushes out, and receptive, it pulls in. That's the feminine energy. So the feminine energy receives and the masculine energy gives, right? So that's the balance. And we all have a balance of both of those energies. Some of us are imbalanced. That's a whole nother conversation. And that's part of the conversation we're going to have today. So again, if you see the link, you can see the link if you want to join our conversation today. I want to shout out those who are here with us live, because it's always great to have you here with us. So shout out to Brother Wale. Welcome. One love to you, brother. Respect and honor to you, Brother Jadorian. Shout out to the Tehuti Ma'at militia in the house. If you don't know about Tehuti Ma'at, again, you can visit our website. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. I believe it's already in the description, but it's tehutima'at.org. If you want to support any of our initiatives that we have there, if you want to join the Tehuti Ma'at militia, even at the kingdom rank, you can get access to our monthly newsletter, our community space, and really engage with us more deeply around the revolutionary work that we're doing, and really just support. If you want to just support our missions and our initiatives, whether that's our educational platform, Think, where we want to teach empowering African consciousness, right? Black consciousness from a place of holistic truth and rooted in our identity as cosmic beings and the first original wisdom keepers of the earth, all over the planet. The whole planet is ours. And part of the recognition of our power and part of our reclamation is us remembering that right there. Remembering that we are the elders of the planet, but what comes with that eldership and what comes with that power is responsibility. And a lot of us are not ready for power. So Tehuti Ma'at as an instrument is designed for people who want to embody these principles of wisdom, truth, intelligence, reciprocity, balance, symmetry, wholeness, morality, intellect at the highest levels. That's what Tehuti Ma'at, expression, communication, connection, are welcome to join our community. And we do a lot of personal development, a lot of healing work. There's a lot of supportive spaces within there. So if you have any questions about it, you can also just go ahead and ask via email, grow@tehutima'at.org. You can also text us at 646-883-Ma'at. But our membership program is really dope for anyone who is more serious about joining and their transformation process and preparing themselves to hold the responsibility that comes with being in your power and creating institutions that give us that sovereignty and power, which is really what we're about and what we're doing behind the scenes. So that being said, I want to shout out our brother Jadorian, and then we have Infinite Dream Studio. Welcome. Yes, the Tehuti Ma'at militia's in the house. Hi, Kyria. Okay, so shout out to y'all. I see you always speaking on truth, Brother Wale. Help to revive the language of our ancestors. Truth. Teach your children to do the same. Speak truth always. Ashe. All right. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our conversation today about love and lust in relationships. So one of the first things that I want to talk about when it comes to love and lust in relationships is lust is not an inherently bad thing. And I think we have to really be critical in our perspectives of lust. Lust, desire, all the range of experiences that we have in our humanity are all divine. And again, that's rooted in our tradition. I know in a lot of major religions, these ideas are not, that's not inherent, right? Our humanity is perceived to be sinful. Whereas in Kemetic science, our humanity was our path to embodying divinity. And that was the goal for us ancestrally. Everyone was, well, not everyone, but most were striving. Remember, when we built this civilization, it was a buildup from the initial African civilizations and empires that had existed. So you have a amalgamation of all different cultural expressions from Africa merging at a high point, right? A golden age. Kemet was a very powerful expression of classical African civilization. And in that space, we had the buildup from all the millennia of African brilliance and genius building up. And it was a really high culture. So sometimes it's hard for us to like align fully with our ancestral principles, because if you're not creating a life where you can embody or exist in those frequencies, how can you really imagine being in such a dense experience and environment, what it was like for us ancestrally in that state of abundance when there's so much artificial scarcity surrounding you? And that's like one of our main battles, is like seeing our abundance and the prosperity and the power that we have, because there's so many illusions and falsehoods that are projected onto us. Blessings, Bonita. Hey, so glad to have you here, love. Thank you for being here. Okay, so now let's go into principles that we have in different ways that we can root ourselves in recognizing the necessity for all these principles. One thing that people misinterpret about our ancient tradition is that almost like it was like a self-aggrandized, like, or I don't know, it's just like an ego-driven expression to have like these statues and monuments, like, oh yeah, these pharaohs, which is not the original word in Medu Neter. I'm gonna honor our brother Wale, who said for us to teach our language, and the power of the vibration of our language is very important, because the original word is Nesubiti, right? Nesubiti is like is that supreme leader that we consider like the pharaoh and we know as the pharaoh, right? Those leaders were not just building monuments to just show themselves, right? One, it was a recognition of, yes, your accomplishments, your authority, your reign, and also we knew we would be here. That's one thing that we have to remember. A lot of the work that we do in taboos, sexual alchemy, and a lot of the other medicines that we offer through Tehuti Ma'at is around holding our prophetic lens that we had ancestrally, to recognize we knew we would be here in this moment right now, and we also knew that we would be victorious, and we left things intentionally as reminders, right? There's a reason why we built tombs and why we prepared for the so-called afterlife, right? for the transition of the soul or the spirit and the continuation of the experience of the soul. So a lot of what I'm sharing with you is really to activate soul remembrance. There are things that may just trigger something, sensation, something in your body, just something in your consciousness. And even if you can't fully process it, you get whatever it is that you need, because we have returned to this moment. Those of us who are here on the planet at this moment are here for a transformation process. And it's like, think of it like a beautiful play. You have different characters, different roles, and you got to have people who are on the oppositional side. And then you have people who are here for, you know, the warriors of light, as they're called, the people who are here for the transformation, for to bring the solar energy back, right? That's what I mean when I say the light. I mean the light frequency, like the light energy, the higher frequency, back to the planet, because that's what brings Ma'at. It brings back the balance. So when the scale is tilted all the way over here, we bring it back to neutrality. That's the equinox. Again, solar powered planet. So we use the sun to orient us. So rooting ourselves back in nature, the sun gives us everything that we need, and it is our ultimate model of growth and development. I mentioned the winter solstice before, but then we also have a summer solstice where we have the longest day and the shortest night. So eventually there will be another golden age. And then the cycle continues. We go back to an equinox where the days shorten and the nights lengthen, and then you go back to a winter solstice. This natural cycle is very essential and important for us to understand, because the purpose of us exploring taboos in relationships in this context and on this platform is ritually for us to acknowledge what it is that we're shedding, the purpose of it, how it teaches us, so that we can move forward and elevate or levitate our energy, right? So let's go ahead and start looking at lust itself. So again, if you want to join the conversation, I do invite you to join the link in the StreamYard. I would love to have you to be a part of it. Oh, what? Hi, Brother Wale and Kyria. All right. So, how y'all doing tonight?
Hello, hello. Life is good. Yes,
Glad to
yes.
have
Life
you.
is good.
Welcome. How are you, Kai?
I'm really well just with my children, and I just was like, I have to join. So, hi,
Okay.
everyone. Greetings.
Welcome. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you.
And also, if anyone else who is not joining the conversation with us live, you can put any comments, questions, or any relationship taboos that you're interested in us exploring into the chat, and we'll still engage in that conversation. So I'm curious about your perspectives. I've kind of like laid the foreground of love and lust being how we navigate or enter into the conversation. I think one of the easiest ways to look at it is thinking about how, you know, if we're dealing with an intimate relationship and it it has all the love but it lacks the lust, that lust also serves a purpose in terms of the magnetism of the relationship, in terms of the sexual dynamic in the relationship, and essentially and fundamentally it brings us back to the power and the importance of sex, which is something that I wouldn't say is inherently taboo. I think there's certain aspects of it that are, but I mean, obviously we see sex everywhere. Sex sells nearly everything, right, in our modern society. So it's out in the forefront, but it's in particular ways. I think the sacredness, like sacred sexuality, is more taboo than some of the, you know, things that are just promoted openly. But I'm curious about what aspect of that dynamic of like love and lust, because then we also have the opposite. You have relationships where they're solely lust based, right? Like casual relationships where there's, you know, what would it be, like friends with benefits, like casual sexual encounters, promiscuity in that sense. And that's typically demonized or villainized. or judged as a bad thing. And then on the other side, we also can have situations where, you know, culturally it might look fine to just be in a relationship where love is the source, and then there's a lot of or there's a lack thereof lust and that spark within the connection. So both of those in the context of Ma'at are like extremes, right? You have an underemphasis and an overemphasis. Because also when you have a relationship where the love is lacking and the emotional connection is lacking, then there's an imbalance within that as well, on that aspect or that side of the scale. So I'm just curious, however you want to engage in the conversation, and what are your thoughts? Do either of you want to start or share your thoughts?
Okay, my perspective so always goes back to truth. Love, lust don't really matter. Peanut butter sandwiches, you know, ball games. It really doesn't matter. My thing is, no matter what the thing is, just sprinkle truth on it. It'll be better. If you want it, if you're into lust, just speak truthfully. Don't be like lying to people. Let them know that's where you hanging out at. And if you're in love with somebody, tell them, hey, you know, be truthful. Don't be stringing them out like, you know, I'm gonna, you know what I mean? All that lying, man. And then when you do that, people build what they call trust. Because, you know, truth builds trust. I don't care if they can trust you going to kill them. Trust don't care whether you like it or not. But you can trust their word, they're going to try to kill you. You know what I mean? Because that's how they come off. They got your trust in that word. So I'm just saying, ought to trust in your word that you're going to help them. It's just a matter of trust. Once you build a trust, you can build the unity. Because then you're just like a bull. You know, a bull will do this and that. But if you want to unify with the bull, you put him on that little circular thing with the thing in his nose, and he'll walk around and churn all day. You understand what I mean? You're just being real with a thing, and be real with it. It'd be real with you. And I'm saying that's no matter love or lust, all of those things are floating. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. Trying to do that thing about equalizing them up is like spinning 8 plates. You ever seen the guy that be at on the Johnny Carson show, and he's spinning all these little plates on a little skinny stick, and he goes from stick to stick, spinning the plates, keeping them up, spinning. That's how it is when you try to balance stuff. You just let stuff flow. It'll come and go on its own. You can't balance the ocean. It will ebb and tide. You know, you just get in there with it and be like, get in the flow, and you're in there. And that comes from truth.
Yes, well said. Well said. Thank you. I really appreciate you just bringing the, what would I call that? The neutrality of truth, because really the judgment, whether it's right or wrong, becomes a distraction from the ability to actually face what it is, right? But sometimes it's not as easy for us to just immediately go to that, because those judgments are all things that are reflections for us, right? Usually people are in a state of imbalance because the inability to just see and be with the truth of what is, right? And recognize the divinity of that. So as you put it, if you, whatever it is, whatever you choose, doesn't matter what it is, be in truth with it. What makes it difficult for people to be in truth, typically in relationships, is expectations, and attachments. I think there's attachments, there's fears, there's all these other things. And what is important to recognize is the truth. We always, that's a common saying, right? The truth shall set you free. But really, the truth is the most liberating thing. And what I can't think of something more valuable than someone's trust. You know, but again, if you can't trust yourself or even be honest with yourself about what you want, right? Because sometimes, again, running that program, it's like, oh, well, the right thing for me to do is this. Going back to that Eurocentricity and thinking this is always right and this is always wrong, and thinking we're looking for this like virtuous expression instead of looking at it in the context of our African-centered perspective that I just presented with Ma'at, you have to synthesize. There's a full spectrum. And sometimes something is right in a moment, and that same thing could be wrong in another moment. It depends on the context, the circumstance, the situation, the person. You can only judge it for yourself. So part of the liberation of the truth is the truth just is, right? So if that's actually what's happening, I think the important thing when it comes to like speaking about in relationships is recognizing what's happening beneath the surface, what's happening behind the scenes in the relationship. If it looks like a beautiful happy marriage on the front and the out and to the outside world, but on the inside there's domestic violence, abuse, all kinds of infidelity, right? Like what is the value really of that facade when the truth is the whole thing? It's what's happening in the light and what's happening in the dark. So I think when it comes to relationships, I also love for people to recognize, like, yes, that is true. Everything that Brother Wale is true. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but that's on us, right? The more we practice truth, the more we express the truth, the more honest we are with ourselves, the more we lighten our hearts, the easier it is for us to just exist in that authenticity and not be afraid of what other people are going to think or what the cultural or collective norms are. We need to make it a cultural and a rooting piece, or a normalize authenticity and truth. But it's hard to do that with things like cancel culture. If somebody says the wrong thing, then everybody attacks them, instead of recognizing the freedom that people have to really express what they really feel and what they really think and what they're really actually doing. Not saying that that's always going to be that. Sometimes that can be harmful, right? There's obviously nuance to the conversation, but I think that that's a really, really beautiful piece that you lifted, and I appreciate you for doing that. And then welcome, Amma. Blessings. So again, I do have the link if you want to go ahead and enjoy it. Kai, do you want to add your hi? It's nice to see you.
Hello. I was listening in and being a mommy, so I was doing both.
Yeah.
But I kind of agree with the brother. Like when it was like love versus lust, I'm like, I need them both. They're both necessary. Um, as long as they're from, like, it's about balance, really. It's about authenticity and balance. And I'm like really clear around, like, we sometimes it's so often us as human beings, we want to right wrong everything, and we got to put things in categories and be self-righteous and point at things and try to find fault and negativity. But it's like all of it is here for us to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about acknowledging, even if we're operating from lust, there's a lesson and there's a reason why it's telling us something. It's an opportunity for us to um, be more informed about how we're showing up. Um, but everything has cycles. And so being aware of where you are at in your cycle is really important. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
love is, I don't know, love is all of it. And it's, the thing that people are aspiring for. And sometimes lust is a gateway to it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like fear can be the gateway to love, and everything's a gateway to another experience. So
Yeah, I love that you speak of it as a cue, right? Like
Mhm.
all of the whole point of the experience is the experience, right?
Yes.
But it's interesting in that context, because I think about like how we actually live and experience these things. Because even for me, as someone who is very aware of all of the things I just shared, right? like very consciously aware of it. There's ways that like I'm even looking at myself right now, like a lot of things that are coming up for me right now where I'm recognizing, oh, I'm holding some of those
Yes.
program thoughts about lust. And for me, a lot of it was coming from really my childhood and like even adolescence, young adulthood, coming into Christianity. And one thing I just realized is like I had my first intimate relationship, my first sexual experience at 16, and I was also baptized at 16.
Mm.
I just like retrieved that part, like, and that part is what made it so challenging
Yeah.
to face, one, just the lust itself, right? The
Mhm.
desire, which is like a natural like heat and passion and expression of our nature.
Yeah.
And I felt like, yeah, like right now I'm like going back to that 16-year-old self in so many ways
Yeah.
to retrieve the wisdom of her from a lens of non-judgment, which is so powerful.
Mhm.
um and I'm also currently in a relationship where I feel like the lust is so high that it makes me like question the love, you know? So I was thinking about the ways that I've literally been challenging myself to embody more of what I'm sharing and what I know, and recognize the ways that, you know, I'm trying to even integrate what Brother Wale says, because like we're always speaking on truth, but I'm like, well, I feel like I'm in truth with it because like I'm always talking about the things that I'm moving through in a very open and transparent way.
Which I
But I think,
admire about you.
thank you, thank
May
you.
I nudge you just a bit?
Yes,
Uh,
of
mhm.
course.
You were just saying about recognizing my perchance. What's the opposite of right?
Left.
See what I mean? For me, you give the truth. For others, you say wrong.
Mm. Ha.
Be true all the time. I mean, you know the truth. We all do, but we don't always proffer it because about, oh, I don't want to seem strange. I don't want to. You can do that
Mm-hmm.
if that's
Yeah.
what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I meant by the commitment to truth. Are you willing to commit to it to that point? Because I was taught were you taught formally? Because I was taught formally. I had instructors in
like
in the
initiating you.
in, yeah, in the arts.
Mm-hmm.
I had instructors in the arts. But anyway, they used to say a thing like this. They say it's very difficult to remain sane in an insane asylum.
Yeah. So interesting. I have a a verse in a song. I go, um sent to stand the truth, can't put me on mute. My horn toot toot, competition I chew. Question my integrity. You only better me, feather me. I care allegedly. I'm no celebrity, nor do I wanna be. Nah, I'm no wanna be. Not average, you see. But I am the mean. I have no extremes. I know what I need. Know who I be's. The spiritual team transcends what it seems. I can't keep my hands clean, but no less my light beams at my enemy schemes. I'm living my dreams. No need for the distortion. I'm beyond the extortion, far from a proportion. From abortions to contortions, I've done my portion to remain sane among the insane. I've entertained. There's no one to blame. Been shifted the shame, transformed the pain. Stop playing with games and fucking with lames. There's still freedom to gain. I never be the same, but the essence remains. This lioness you can't tame. So, what do you do? But it's interesting because I put that line in there, like the entertaining the things, like to remain sane amongst the insane, like there's a reality of like being in it as well. And the truth, or like questioning the integrity that I say in the beginning of the verse, is the essence of it, because every time someone challenges your integrity, for you to expand or embody more of the truth, is a very powerful thing. It's not a need for defense, right? Sometimes people move into defensiveness, but to me that's a gift. Like, you challenge me in this moment to embody more of what I know, as I'm recognizing that there's space for me to embody more of what I know, right? Because it's not just about knowing. And that's the key right now, is what's going to be the key distinguishing factor, and what is going to shift the myth leaders out of position, is the actual embodiment, right? Those who live the truth, those who are what they say they are, you know. And so I don't take that lightly, and I appreciate you lifting that, because when you say left is the opposite of right, there's a declaration that when I moved through a particular healing space, maybe like a few seasons ago, one of the declarations I had to write for myself was, when I take a left, I bring the right. I am light. And the medicine in that for me was coming to a fork in the road, where there are points in our lives where we do have to make decisions, or every time we make a choice, even if we feel like it's a fork in the road, because sometimes it's a crossroads, which is a whole nother thing, right? The illusion of the crossroads and how you move forward. But sometimes we come to choice points where there are actually forks in the road, and you can't just keep going straight, and it splits. And those moments can be very challenging. But when you do recognize that you can take that left and still bring the right, like, that's part of the integration. That's part of actually holding Ma'at and recognizing the divinity of both sides, and actually having neutrality. But that's definitely not, an easy thing for most of us to hold, because of the programming we have around right and wrong. So for me, going back to 16 and retrieving a piece that was critical for me to hold in this moment right now, in this season where I'm being asked to be exalted and to use my voice, so
Excuse me.
essential. So essential, because yeah, that's what I'm realizing, is it was right for me to do everything I did. Like holding that with sovereignty, with authority, and recognizing that beauty and that power, and holding that strength. It's like but again, it's a process of integration. So I think it's interesting how our relationships reflect to us what we need. And sometimes we run away from the mirror, or we point the finger in judgment, so that we don't acknowledge that what we're seeing in the other person is really a reflection of what we have to deal with within ourselves. I think that's a huge part of relationships that's not healthy. Is every relationship you attract is you. It's for you. And
It's for you. Yeah.
yeah.
I
But
was going to say something, but I don't want to diminish nothing you say. I want to let it sink, and and do its thing and spread. It's beautiful.
give thanks. Um I'm just looking in the chat. Does every relationship have the same taboos? Ooh, great question. Thank you. That must be Baba Julia. Shout out to Legacy Jackson for the great question. Uh, no, I don't think every relationship has the same taboos. And I'm glad that we laid out the nuance that we needed to lay out, to make sure we were having the conversation in truth, so that we can explore the nuances of different relationships. So what do you think, Kai? Does every relationship have the same taboos?
I think you get to define your relationships. You get to create and define them based on who you are. So I don't think they have the same taboos. They may have similar, like I think everyone, depends on the relationship. I think, again, going back to authenticity, like even some relationships are inauthentic, and that makes them authentically inauthentic because they're based on that. So again, we get to create our own relationships, but the taboos are definitely not all the same. Not to me, anyway.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you made. It made me think about like superficial relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I think about like that is a taboo in society. Like, it's not really acknowledged that like people are showing up in certain cases. For me, thankfully, like, I don't think I have to experience much of that. Like, show up into spaces and like, you know, have surface relationships. I think it's something that could actually challenge me to grow. Is something as I'm thinking about like coming online and being on social media more. Like, I don't want to have in-depth relationships with millions of people. I know that much. But it's interesting that like in a work situation or like, you know, your tip, and I mean like a typical like maybe 9 to 5 office space or like corporate dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those relationships are, yeah, superficial in nature, but it's kind of like a taboo that you're like, it's not, it's an unspoken like inauthenticity to, like, I don't know, that's what I thought of as you described that, like as a example. But I guess that comes down
I,
to agreements as well.
yeah. Um,
Hmm.
my children are all coming in here. I was going to say, I think, just speaking of, in authenticity within relationships, I think there's like one of those taboos is like you don't share what's going on in your home out in the public. So does that make it inauthentic? You know what I mean? Like if things are not well, but you go out and face the world, you're not letting everyone know, hey, we're going through some things in this household. Like, do you share your personal business if things are not well? Does that make it inauthentic, or does that make it it's nobody's business?
Mm. Well, that depends on each person,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think for me, it's one of the things like it's actually more of an exercise for me to not like if someone asked me, but there were points in my journey in my life where I feel like someone asked me how I am, and you know, I I wouldn't immediately go into like the core truth of like everything I'm moving through. And one thing I realized recently is someone asked me how I was doing, and I just like opened up the conversation, and I realized it like attracted unsolicited advice and all kinds of
Yeah.
things. And you know, you just have to recognize like what comes with that. Can you process that? I think it's fair to not necessarily open yourself up to that. Um, but I also, yeah, I'm curious what um, our brother Wale thinks.
Oh, I was just, as you asked the question, what was crossing my mind is just because someone asks a question, don't mean I have to answer it.
Yes.
I have that same philosophy, Brother Wale. Like I really don't feel obligated to answer anyone's questions or answer my phone. Like if my phone rings, I don't feel like that's someone's right that I answered. It's like I need to agree that this is the time for me. But I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, to me, this is my definition of sovereignty. I just divined it here recently into one statement. Sovereignty is is something we're all born with, and it cannot be taken from us. We can only give it up, because sovereignty is our right, our God. I mean, whatever you say, God, creator, given, whatever. We come here with this sovereignty, which is our right to be the author of our life, of our own life. That's the only thing we got, is the right to be the author of our own life. That's how I see it.
Right.
And I looked at it from a lot of angles, but that's how I see it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's well said. Yeah. And really the value of sovereignty is under understated.
Right.
It's a really important thing. And like, if you don't have this, there's aspects of sovereignty that are necessary to have healthy boundaries. There's aspects of sovereignty, like what you just said about, you know, your own energy management. Like, you are responsible for that. And then our brother said, I don't think that's inauthentic. I think it's inauthentic if you curse out your partner and then post a Facebook post about how happy you are. Yes.
But how about if you are happy because you cussed them out? No, I'm just like I told
You know
her.
what I have also divined or realized, I should say, what I have realized is that most of the illnesses that I see in people, most of the sicknesses, depression, all of them things like that, high blood pressure, all that stuff, almost all of it uh, 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 comes from not speaking the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people who were so depressed, but they were depressed because they were oppressing themselves to not speak up at their job, to their husband, to their wife, to their whatever. And once they started doing it, it was like a burst of energy that they've been holding up like a ton of dynamite, and it's killing them. So they have these different ways to die. Some died from diabetes, blood pressure, whatever, you know, because people be depressed and stuff like that. So the thing about when I get into truth, it's like a whole thing, because to me, truth, the creator is absolute truth. I heard you say the creator is truth. That's what's truth is. Whatever is at whatever moment, that's truth. And the creator is constantly creating. So I'm in that kind of thing of my state of mind when I go into the truth. I want you to understand it might be a little much. Okay. But I do want you to understand why I'm going into it like I am, because that's how I see the whole thing. I see the creator as being truth. So when we speak truth, and everybody knows truth, little children, because I deal with little children very easy, because they speak truth they right away, they be holding my hand and stuff because they see truth all the time. And what happens is when you speak truth, you're more in line with the creator, right? You're more in sync, more in a vibrational atonement, tune. You're more in vibrational tune. You're more in the chorus. Like if you want an A flat, or A natural, whatever, that's how you do it. You know, you make these sounds, and these vibrations create certain things to move. Like, you know, some things are taught that you can move things through vibration and frequency and all that kind of stuff, and sounds and all that. It change everything. When you just put it on some sand or sound on a speaker or something, all of this stuff makes designs, and not only designs, the designs are what they call sacred geometry, right? So all of this stuff is in tune with itself and its own self. So because the whole thing is in tune with itself and its own self, and we are in tune with the creator long as we speak the truth. When we obfuscate the truth, when we get out of line with the creator, which is truth, then we are making our own situation bad. Nothing else has to happen. Since I was born, before I was born, because I was born prematurely, but since before I was born and since I've been born, how did I get here? Through the creator. The creator has provided everything I needed to exist to this very moment, for you the same way, for everybody the same way, that roach over there, that doggone lizard, everything the creator provided for so we don't have to really worry, but we are taught to worry because we think the opposite of right is wrong, or we are encased with that kind of lie in our head, and it's a confusion with the truth, and we can't get in. It's more difficult to get in sync with the creator because we got a bunch of lies that we see as realities in our head. And you know, like I said, that's my whole thing, is this truth thing, because to me, truth is the creation. The creation is always happening. It's happening, the coming and going. You know, Buddhism and stuff, what do you call it? The forming and the dissolution. It's constantly occurring. It's constant. That is the creation. creation. So the Tao is to move in sync with the creation. It's always facing what is, not what you want, what you think, and all that, because all that can be driven by outside forces, what you want and what you think. All that can be driven by outside forces so easily. They got
Yeah.
studies on mind control and all that hypnotism. So I don't even bother with what I be thinking and stuff like that, because I know you got to get deeper than that. We got to come from a deeper point than just this mind thing. The mind is, I
Yeah,
don't. I know it's great for.
the external influence, to water your wisdom, the external influence doesn't necessarily reflect the internal reality. And sometimes, and I think even like being able to like reconcile, or I think there's a difference of looking at like that difference, right? That space between the conscious and the unconscious, or that space between, what you think and what you know, or what you believe and what you're actually doing, right? Like when there's differences, sometimes we think of those as contradictions. And I think Ma'at supports us in looking at it as more of an opportunity to integrate. How are those two sides of the same coin necessary? How can they work together? How do they inform each other? And how do we hold both instead of them being at odds with each other? So I thought about that as you said that. We also had a really great question that I want to lift. Thank you again, Mr. Jackson, for this question. Do you recommend any tools or practices to discover or explore relationship taboos with your partner before lines are crossed, or partners before lines are crossed? Personally, like one of the first things that I'll lift, like we've been speaking a lot about truth, which is Ma'at. And the other side of that is Tehuti, which is communication and expression. And I think that the greatest tool or practices that I offer all have to do with communication when it comes to exploring relationship taboos, because the space, part of it has to also be the space cultivated. Most people, when they attract relationships, there's resonance in the frequency. So you're going to attract somebody to an extent. You're going to speak the same language. And when it comes to a point where that's not the case, then that's a whole nother topic, because maybe that's another taboo, is like holding on to relationships that really aren't reflections anymore. But in the case where you are speaking the same language, there's a baseline where you can meet each other. And one practice that I've recommended and that I've practiced in previous intimate relationships is having like rhythmic communication. Instead of everything, like creating space for specific communication, if that makes sense. So for me, I always like to align with nature. So I encourage people to use something like the moon cycle or the seasons, or anything that you can use, or any way that both you and the other people that you're communicating with or exploring these taboos with are able to root yourselves and connect with whatever resonates. It could be a specific, I don't know, tree that you go to. One of the things my mom always says is like, she had a tree in front of the house, and she would say all her problems from work she would put at that tree before she walked in the house, right? Like those are little like rituals and habits that people can create. But I think in relationships, like aligning, for example, with the new moon, what I've done in the past is like with the new moon, be clear about intentions that we have around the relationship and things that we're shifting and being accountable to internally. And then at the full moon, allowing those to be moments of expression around the heavier aspects of the relationship that usually make way for the taboos to be explored. But there have to be agreements made as well. So those are also fundamental things. Even when you're dealing with relationships, like familial relationships, one thing with our family is like having our family meetings, like having moonly connection points where like you're able to rhythmically connect and communicate, is a practice that I highly recommend, because it doesn't matter what type of relationship you're dealing with. Communication is always key when it comes to relationships. It's part of the connection, right? It's the most intelligent thing to do, coming back to Tehuti, because Tehuti is also intelligence, it's wisdom. And the only way that we can provide grace and that we can be in agreement with each other is if we're expressing and we're allowing each other to express. Another tool that is used usually in those practices is something like a crystal, or like people call it like a talking stick, something that's used, and you can actually choose something that is going to stimulate and support the voice or the throat, right? There's certain stones that are great. Like I used to really love turquoise when I was really working with my throat energy center or my throat arit. But there's ways that you could like literally implement all of these different spiritual awarenesses and knowings and align with nature to support you in creating rituals and habits. But I think that the most important thing is for people in these dynamics to create ones that work for them and align with them. You know, I could say every full moon have a, a candle and like have a sit down with your partner and explore such and such. But that might not resonate with you and your partner, right? You have to figure out what aligns and what feels best for you. But I just wanted to give those examples. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that either.
I was looking at the question, and I think it was when I saw before lines are crossed, I think it was meaning before you enter into an intimate relationship, possibly. I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe.
can you clarify that if you're still here, Mr. Jackson? Please clarify before lines are crossed. I was thinking in terms of taboos, like, because when I think of taboos, it's kind of like the unspoken thing or the uncomfortable thing or the inappropriate thing, right? So then when there's a taboo, it's something that can be perceived as like through the lens of judgment. And before a line is crossed, it could be like, for example, one of the most direct ways I could think about is like, oh, he said like issues or boundaries. I was thinking like even sexually, like there's certain things like you have to communicate regardless of what the issue is or the boundary may be. There has to be communication and clarity around what that is. But I think also there's some people who, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's why that was so important, like the sovereignty, right? Having the boundaries, being clear, being truthful and honest with yourself so that you can be truthful and honest in a relationship. Because one of the key like relationship taboos I think about is like, for example, in the collective, like typical, like mainstream things like polyamory and polygamy are usually frowned upon, but it's a norm. Like it's very common for there to be infidelity in relationships. And I think that that's very strange because I recently watched a spiritual like personality online who opened up about his relationship with like his wife and his girlfriend and got completely attacked for doing it. And like as I was like watching that, like kind of witnessing like the attack on it, I was just like, it's so interesting because really all he's doing is expressing the truth, you know, regardless of how you feel about it and what you think or how it might contradict what he's saying. It's like that's what they're actually doing. They could have just been doing that behind the scenes. They didn't have to bring it forward. I mean, there's so much to it, but I just thought about that because I was just like, it's so funny to me that people would rather keep like literally have another partner, but instead of being open up front and honest and communicating about it and being with someone who's in agreement with that and who can respect that, it's like it's very manipulative and it's very I don't know, it's just like to betray someone by presenting or acting as if that's not what's happening, being something that's considered to be more acceptable than the truth of just having it out in the open, is a very interesting relationship taboo.
I'll say this: it's something that can get you killed real quick.
That's
You
all
want
he
to
got to say about that.
elaborate?
No, I mean he's right. People can get killed from that type of betrayal, I think.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
And you know what the worst part is? The worst part is not what you did, whatever that is.
mhm,
The worst part is you betrayed a trust. Betrayal.
that's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you're talking about like, I think trust in relationships. I'm so glad that you had lifted that earlier and you connected it so beautifully with
Mhm.
truth. Um, is it really is the most valuable thing in relationships, and that's like it, and that's almost a taboo. Like that's not even something that's like really held in
Right.
light, you know, and up front. And I think that that's
Oh,
also
yeah.
why, huh?
In any relationship. That's what I used to tell people. That's what your credit card or your credit score says. You can be trusted. People say, but it's saying you speak the truth. You say you're going to pay on the 3rd of March, and you do. And that's just all it says. It's a way to keep up with who speaks the truth and who doesn't. And then I see people all famous for not speaking the truth. Talking about, my credit bad. I'm like, wow, you say that like it's a badge of honor. When actually, what it is, do you know how much trust is worth on any market? Any market, just name a market, and it's worth so much. You want to go to the stock market. You want to go to the manufacturing market, any market. Cars, people don't trust your cars. They're not going to buy it. See, trust is that. That's what trust is. You could sell it all day. I mean, you could put out advertisement. If the people don't trust it, they're not going to buy it. And the
Mhm.
trust is a heck of a thing.
That's right.
I don't understand how people belittle it with such a, like they don't have a responsibility.
That's right.
That's just me. Like I say, I'm into truth, so you know, I got this thing going on.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when you are holding that frequency, you attract a different caliber of relationship. That's also another thing that I've been recognizing in my personal experience is there are relationships that don't align with my values, and when they show up in my life, like how, yeah, like I'm just navigating like how to show up in that.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's been an interesting thing also, because yeah, how can you have trust if, how can you build anything without trust, really?
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's the key,
Crack
right?
me, you crack me up. How could you build anything without trust? Matter of fact, the word trust is used in buildings.
Mhm.
In building buildings, you have a trust. You understand this? The part of the building that is the trust. Are you familiar with what I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Trust, maybe it's TRUSS. I don't know. I have to
What
look
is
that up.
that? What part? Let me see.
It has something to do with how you set the roof.
Oh, it's like how you top it off. Hold on, I
Yeah,
gotta
I
look
would
it
have
up.
to look it up exactly because once again, some of these things I haven't dealt with in so long.
It says a building truss is a structural framework, usually made from wood, steel, or aluminum, that's designed to support loads like a roof, bridge deck, or floor by distributing weight efficiently through interconnected triangular units. That's deep. I don't even know if everybody is gonna get that, but thank you for that, brother
Yeah.
Wale.
We got so much going on. I would tell you something on this sexual thing or relationship thing with the different sexes. I usually don't talk about that kind of stuff because everybody's got different individual things going on, la di
Mm-hmm.
da. And however, I would say about all of those things is, you got to be truthful first. that should be the priority thing. Like me, like I was hearing about the 10 commandments of this one and the 48 commandments of that one and the 99 commandments of the other one. And I did, I divined until I realized that the ancestors were saying to me, we only have one commandment: speak truth always. Long as we in that, it's like you ever try rode what they call this thing, a surfboard. Have you ever been on a surfboard?
That's my
Yes.
next endeavor.
Oh, on a surfboard you got it. It's like dancing. Have you do you freestyle? It's like dancing
Yeah.
when because you gotta be so fluid that you can move with the person that's moving, and you don't know where they about to go or nothing. All you do is move with that movement, and that's how I see it. It's like once you once you get into the truth, it's like that dance with the creator. You're in the movement, and it's
Hmm.
to me it's beautiful to be in that moment. At that moment, I call that moment the location of grace.
Hmm.
Grace to me, grace is a location, and that's the location right there in that moment. By maintaining that moment, not forward or backwards, right, or with regrets, or forward with hopes and desires, but just staying right into right now. That moment of grace,
Yeah.
stupendous.
That's such a
Yeah.
great analogy for relationship. Like getting on the surfboard. Like when you get on the surfboard, it's really all about balance, and you're trusting the water. Even though you know you might crash, you still swimming towards that wave, right? Which is like a really powerful analogy when you think about the waves as or the water as the emotional realm and the things that you move through in relationships, the ebbs and the flows, all of the beautiful symbolism of water. I think that's an amazing analogy for relationship. And yeah, um, let me see. Oh no, that was your message, Kai. But yeah, this was so powerful. The building a trust is a structural framework. It made me think about in Cabo Verde what we do when we build the water tanks. Not all of them. Some of them are used. They do what's called like a beton, which I don't know what it would be called in English, but essentially they raise these pillars and like cement the structure so that there's like plywood or flat wood planks that are held up by the pillars so that the surface or the top or the roofing can stay up. But there's this
Oh,
ancient technique, and that doesn't last forever, right? It can't hold a infinite amount of weight. But there's an ancient technique that the elders use and taught, and there's only a few people who still know how to do it. So like we have one, our water tanks are built with this method, and it's using rock, and the way that the rock is layered in such a way that you could literally build another house on top of the water tank, and it's the foundation, the structure is so sound that it's not going to cave in. So I think about like, even the elements, right? Like what material are you building with when you're talking about building relationships as well? Because when you're talking about taboos, for us, we're saying taking accountability by owning our shit. So we're talking about collectively speaking. When we come on here and we're putting this frequency into the collective field, we know the magic, we know the power, we know what it's moving, what it's opening up, even in terms of just simply the consciousness, but also vibrationally the stream of that. There's a power to us acknowledging this waste, right? And then using it as fertilizer to inform and to like speak life into like what we're sowing right now, which is like, what are relationships that are rooted in integrity? What are relationships that allow and have grace for these so-called taboos to exist in truth? Because you also brought up same-sex relationships, and one thing that's been coming up a lot lately is like been a trending topic is or a trending like social media um hashtag is people revealing their spouse is like well, they call it DL, but like essentially having homosexual relations in secret. And I do think about like there's a power to the exposure of the truth of that sexual dynamic, because what is actually dangerous is the lie. And when people feel like they cannot be upfront about it, we can't heal those sexual dynamics. We can't process and allow ourselves to be in the truth of where we are if we don't have the grace and the space to allow the truth to exist. Because it is what it is, right? But that's what's happening. That's what's creating the shadows. The shadows are created from hiding things, you know?
Yo,
So yeah, that was my last
you
piece
know,
of
I
it.
just saw a movie about something like that, and the guy, some movie, right, on YouTube, and what the guy would do is he'd find some dirt on whoever he wanted something from. He
Hmm.
would send out an investigator to get dirt on him. Anything. It would be even minor stuff, like the guy would smoke outside so his wife wouldn't know he smoked. You know what I'm saying? And he would use that against them. You want your wife to know that you still smoking outside? I mean that you still smoking? You didn't told her, he'd rub it in. And they'd be like, so what do you want? And then he had one guy that started with something just that simple. He had that guy ready to kill somebody. And the guy just killed himself. He said when he got busted, the man said, what did he have on you? He said, you know what? It really wasn't even that bad. But he had worked him and worked him and worked him because of the lie. That's what the whole thing is. You take a lie and use it against a person, get them to lie, pay them to lie, trick them into lying, whatever it is. And then there you go. I mean, it's a problem.
The
That's the
truth is,
control
what
factor.
film? What film is that? Do you remember?
You know what? I don't remember right off the name of the film.
Okay.
I watched a lot of films.
Okay.
It was on YouTube, though. I can say that.
Okay. Well, if anyone remembers the or anyone knows the film, comment it.
Did it come
But
to me
I'd be
who did it? The guy that the guy that's I don't think it's Idris Elba, but it might have been an Idris Elba film. Elba, yeah, Idris Elba. I
hmm
think it. He was in the film, and he was a detective named his
now I
name the
want to watch
name of
it even more.
his detective name was something like Fitch. It was like one word type of thing or something.
Okay, I'm gonna
But
look it up. Yeah,
and
but
that was the
I'd love
movie.
to watch that.
Man, it was like I was watching the psychology of the whole thing, and they would like he would get everybody with he even got the policeman who was working because they were like in Europe somewhere, right, in England or whatever, and he had gotten thrown off the force because he's a roughneck. But
Hmm.
this guy was wanting him from he almost caught him or something. I don't know, but the rest of the plot. But it was a detective who was working with him, and he got something on her by kidnapping her daughter, and got her to bring him at gunpoint to the man. It was beautiful. The man was just twisting their emotions like that with just simple lies and
Yeah,
just coercions and stuff. And
yeah.
it's awesome that can be
That's
done.
that's a really great note that I would love for us to like complete our exploration on relationship taboos, like exploring it spiritually, because what you just described in that film is really what happens spiritually, right? There are entities, there are thought forms, right? There are forces that literally feed off of those things that are in the shadow, right? The things you want to keep secret. And those thought form, like if you want to think about it simply, you don't want to think about it as demons or anything, think about it as a thought form that will literally enter you and be like, oh, so you have a you killed your baby, you think you got some nerve, nobody, like it's like you want to show up like this, but like it's like it'll literally like there are entities that do that. And I shared that because for me, the power of like what I shared in that rap is that the power is when you own the truth. And you, because when you own it, you actually recognize and you pull the treasures and the value, because the truth is like a sword. And if you know how to wield it, you can recognize that that same thing that the so-called enemy, the so-called opposition, that thought form, that demon, that spirit, that entity is trying to feed off of what you got in the shadow, when you actually face it, that's your sword right there. It's you facing and holding the truth of that experience. Like, yeah, I did that. And when the thing is in the shadow, the danger of it is exactly what you just described. Then you have that entity pulling your cords, pulling your string. Now it got you doing more things. Now you're recycling trauma, you're recycling pain, because really those entities attach themselves to us through shame, through guilt, through those denser emotions that actually are stemmed or rooted in our trauma, our pain, right? The things that are uncomfortable, the things that we don't like to feel. That's why we're pushing them away. So that's part of the journey. That's why we have to recognize that everything is both and, right? So coming back to truth, coming back to Ma'at, which I would love to also share. Shout out to you, Stay Balanced. We love your name. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll allow you to speak on that if you'd like. I'm gonna put I want to show Ma'at on the screen, and we're gonna begin
You mean an image?
transitioning it. Yes, these are just slides from one of the sexual alchemy webinars that we did, which I'll go into. I don't want to go too deep into it. This was about around the foundations, but I think another thing that's interesting, which is like a deeper layer of this, but for those who are with us, who are in the occult space and can really hold this, because really Tehuti Ma'at is here for those of us who have returned from this legacy, most of which are Kemetic royalty, you know. And there's a reason why we built these tombs and these chambers and painted elaborately for revolutions. Many moons, many seasons, many hands came together to carve these so-called spells onto the walls, these utterances. And even the demons, or what we perceive as demons, but those entities of darkness and all of that, they are all invocations that we call in for our own protection, for our own advancement. There is no growth without challenges. There is no strengthening without gravity, right? When we think about even Set, or what people, which in Christianity is interpreted into Satan, right? The devil energy, right? Instead of viewing it from a Eurocentric lens as a scapegoat, when we take it to the root through Kemetic science and we look at it as Set is gravity. And what you need gravity. What would we do without gravity? When you think about how we build muscle, it's all about resisting against gravity. You have to have that oppositional force. And you know, I say that just to say, like, we have to also recognize that in power, we define our reality, and we been did that. That's basically what I'm saying. Everything we living through right now, when they go into this space and the Egyptologists, as Baba Heru, my spiritual father, likes to say, when they lie or express falsehoods, it's very interesting to think about, like, this idea of the afterlife is very real. Like, it was after then, but it is right now. You know what was put into those temples. Okay, this is what I wanted to show is Ma'at, especially when we have Stay Balanced. So Stay Balanced said, peace to the room, apologies for being late. You're never late, never late. You might be behind, but you can always catch the raw play. So I wanted to show the judgment scene here, in this expression of Ma'at and cosmic order, because sometimes we perceive it as if it's something that we have to achieve, or instead of something that is, right? So I think that's a great note for us to talk, for us to complete things on, is like this spiritual aspect of relationships, and like how do we make gold out of this, is recognizing, right? Even when we look at Tehuti, who's actually on the scene here, Tehuti is the one with the mask of the ibis bird, the bird with a really long beak, that's behind those scales, behind the side of the scale that has the feather of Ma'at, the ostrich feather. And he's writing the judgment. He's keeping the record. And that's what Tehuti symbolizes, the scribe, the keeper of the
Which
records.
one is Ma'at?
And Ma'at, the actual scale on the top, in the center of the scale at the top, we see an image of the woman facing the right. She's facing towards Tehuti and she has the feather overhead. But the symbol of Ma'at is the entire thing. Like there's so many different dimensions of Ma'at. I think that's also an important thing to lift for those who are not familiar with Ma'at. There's the symbol of Ma'at as the feather, right? As the ostrich itself, right? The nature of the ostrich. There's the symbol of Ma'at as the feminine, right? As the female wearing the ostrich feather. And then there's also the scale itself, which is an aspect of Ma'at. The entire judgment scene is an aspect of Ma'at as well. So,
Oh, okay, I get you.
mhm.
It's a judgment scene. Is not. I get. I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah, like the different dimensions of it, because when we think about Ma'at as grace, right, we could think of the grace as a particular aspect of the scene that comes from the judgment itself, right? But that's still an aspect of Ma'at, or the karma, right? The accounting, right, for what, you know, getting what you give, right? What goes around comes around. So at the judgment scene, you retrieve or you receive your just due. You know, you receive based on what you reap what you've sown. You know, so I think of all of those as different layers and dimensions of Ma'at, or aspects of Ma'at, which is cosmic order. But again, that order just is. So sometimes we look at the world and we're like, oh, we need Ma'at, we need Ma'at. Ma'at is here. Everything is happening exactly in Ma'at. That's why I always orient us back to the sun, so that we recognize the cycle we're in. And we have to recognize, what side of the scale are you on? You know, the side that's light as the feather? Are you on the side that's here for the resurrection and the reclamation and the restoration of this planet? Or are you on the side that's here to destroy, deconstruct, terrorize? Right? Are you on the side of life, or are you on the side of death? We place our weight on one side of the scale or not. But it's important to me that those of us who are here, who are meant to move through the night, who are not entities of the night, who are not meant to exist in the night, are able to be on that solar bark, right? On that boat of Ra, on those of us who are here representing Ra, representing the sun, the creative force of this planet, the creative force of our solar system. And it goes further than that, but it just for us to be able to recognize ourselves. I think that that's very, very important. And Ma'at helps us to honor that, to own that, and to know that everything is in order. And if you feel out of order, it is your responsibility to seruj Ma'at, to restore Ma'at. So if you're putting weight on the wrong side of the scale, your life's going to reflect that, if that's what you're here to do. But I think also that it eliminates the savior complex too, because sometimes we feel like we're here to save people and get them to see our way. No, Ma'at is, right? And in that is, there's just a surrender to the internal responsibility that we have. We're not here to judge anyone else. We're not here to save anyone else. Everyone is in the experience for themselves. There are some people who are here and they are entities of the night, and they will drag you into the night. Those parasites, that are here to feed off of us energetically, that are feeding off of many of us energetically. You know, that is, you know, there's a distinction there. Not everybody don't want saving. Some people, you try to go save them, they will drown you. So I think that is a important note to speak on. And then also we have to acknowledge Tehuti, who brings the accountability, right? Because he wrote, right? That's what Tehuti represents, is the active principle of everything having consciously been created and intelligently designed, and recognizing that everything that ever was and everything that ever will be has been written. So when you move in life with that knowing, there is no wrong turn, right? Whether you go left or right is written, right? It's already in the records of eternity. And there is a power in the acknowledgement of that, and it lightens our heart in many ways. But for many of us, we're building on falsehoods, we're building on ideas and belief systems that were imposed on us to eliminate our power, or to, excuse me, not eliminate our power, but to feed off of our power. Thank you,
Yeah, I
Sister
agree.
Amma.
Mm.
All right, Brother Wale, were you
Yeah, yeah.
expressing something?
Only that I agree with you. You know, I since I first saw you, whatever, I forget, maybe a year ago now, and I like you right away because you're insightful, and
Mm.
you sometimes I don't
Thank
like. Okay, I be like I don't have on the screen or something, but you'll say the same thing while I'm saying it, and I'd be cracking up. I'd be like, right, because you're insightful.
you.
That I might be thinking that's why I like her. She's insightful. And I like to talk to people who are insightful so that I can keep my insightfulness without feeling strained. Nature is such a thing that, to me, I'd be looking for others who have already seen or understand this nature thing, how it works and everything, and how they fit in it, and how what they have decided to do in relationship to it, because it's all what you decide to do, in relationship to whatever your life is. And when I see people like yourself, I am encouraged. So I like to see people like yourself so I can be encouraged and inspired, and uplifted. So yeah, that's beautiful to me.
Ashe. All praises to the divine spirit that's indwelling in all of us, because it's really a reflection of you.
Yep.
I appreciate your insightfulness. Thank you for joining us tonight. Kai, Sister Kai, thank you so much for being here with us also and sharing your beautiful, lovely insights as well. I want to invite anyone who's here with us, who's enjoyed this stream, watching the raw play. If you want to support Tehuti Ma'at, any donations that we receive, whether it's from our website on our donation page, or um, on Cash App, $ Tehuti Ma'at World, goes towards the operations of Tehuti Ma'at. That's operating all of our initiatives, whether it's organic food for the people and the land bases that we are building on, and our raw workshops where we teach all about organic agriculture, the importance of it as a revolutionary act, nutrition, how to heal and reconnect with the planet and with nature for our healing, and food sovereignty and food politics that we are involved in, and all of the other beautiful initiatives that we have with Tehuti Ma'at. So feel free to support us that way. Thank you again for being here, everyone who was here with us live. We love you. Thank you for infusing your energy into the stream. We appreciate you so much. Also, I think Brother Wale, you have a YouTube channel as well that people can check out. And our sister,
Yeah, I do.
yeah, and our sister Kai also has her beautiful program. She's also a brilliant wealth creator, wealth coach. And she also is a filmmaker, producer, director, and educator. So if anyone is an aspiring or even experienced filmmaker, our sister Kai has her amazing page to screen program that she is launching, and you can find out more about that on Sister Kai's um, site. So, I just wanted to shout you guys out. Sister Amma, stay balanced. Thank you for being here. Julius, thanks for being here with us. And anyone else who was here that I didn't, Sister Anita. So anyone who Brother Jadorian in the chat, thank you so much for your presence with us. And finally, I want to share with you all about sexual alchemy, which
Oh,
is our retreat in Cabo Verde. This ritual experience is going to be a very beautiful experience for anyone who wants to physically travel to Cabo Verde, which are islands on the west coast of Africa. We're actually going to go to São Vicente. We're also sending our prayers to São Vicente. If you are not following our page, please do. I'm going to post in the community tab a flyer for a meditation and prayer that we're putting for San Vicente on Friday, specifically because there was a tragedy with this rain that claimed 12 lives the last I checked. It literally impacts everything that we're building and doing with sexual alchemy, with the retreat, literally. So we are really being present with those who are really in need right now from the damage that was done from the rains. And we're going to do a prayer and meditation on Friday to also share the ways that we are supporting the people who are in San Vicente, for people who want to donate goods, foods, anything that they can. They're being shipped over in barrels, so we're coordinating that. And if you're interested in sexual alchemy, you can go to sexualalchemy.com. The retreat experience is going to be multi-layered. Right now, we have revolved the experience of the retreat to include, here you go, to include males as well. So it's going to be for females and males. So whether you are a brother or sister, we invite you to come. We're going to be doing masculine and feminine balancing practices. We're also going to be doing our sexual alchemy classes. We have our meditation sessions, our somatic sessions, which are different practices, and all the details are on sexualalchemy.com, and you can fill out the form, the interest form, if you're there. Everything is included in the retreat except for your flight. We have excursions planned. We're going to travel to another island, which is called Santantan. It is a beautiful, untapped, beautiful paradise. So we have a day trip to Santantan. We also have a day where we go swimming with the turtles. And that experience is really amazing. And we really go into the medicine of the turtles and what their frequency and energy and what their medicine is. So if you have any questions about it, the highlight of the retreat is Carnaval, like literally the carnival experience. And that is the most heightened ritual that we have around sexual energy across the diaspora. It is a ritual of fertility, of resurrection, of honoring all of the potent creative power that is our sexual energy, and giving the space for us to use that powerful collective energy and force field that's created for the collective healing of our ancestral wound, which has been, and it's something that is the focus of why we're doing this, because an aspect of our revolution that has not been centered is the healing of our sexual trauma, which is hemorrhaging so much of our power, particularly with our brothers, that and the movement that's happening right now in the healing process for our brothers to rise to the role of protection so that we can actually embody the shift that we need to create and the power we need to move into. So that's why we're welcoming our brothers to Sexual Alchemy now. If you have any questions, again, you can email us at grow@tehutimaat.org. If you have questions specifically about sexual alchemy, you can email us at sexualalchemy at gmail.com. as well. So thank you again, everybody who was here with us. Respect, honor, balance. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amma. You know I'm a reflection of you, sis. All right. Power, family. Have a beautiful evening. See you next time.